For someone who's trying to get academically involved in parapsychology, the prospect of the future for the field is both a frightening and exciting thing. On the one hand, the field itself has met with a lot of opposition, even though I think it's very worthy of study. Um, on the other hand, there are a lot of advances going on in the field at the moment, and I only see them growing. Um, there have been a lot of theoretical advances, but you don't hear a lot about that. Additionally, there have been some advances in research, and people are getting more involved in trying to get back to the roots of parapsychology. And in some ways, I think by blending current research paradigms with the classic research into spontaneous cases and alleged physical phenomena in seance rooms, and also the study of mediums. I think by doing that, we can get closer to the roots of psychical research, and at the same time, I think we can learn a lot more about the nature of what we're studying hypothetically. Um, Now, this is really all going to depend on how much effort we put into it, and honestly, I don't think, regardless of whether or not efforts put in or not, I don't think that the current debate between proponents and counter advocates of the psi theories and parapsychological research, I don't think it can continue, at least in its current form, not indefinitely. I think that eventually there's going to have to be a melting point, a point of convergence between the different camps, skeptic and believer. Personally, I am a skeptic, but I'm not the hard-nosed type of person that you'd find in the so-called skeptical movement. I think that media challenges, while they can be fun and there's nothing really wrong with them, they're not a scientific exercise in the sense that they are any better than actual research. And as long as the research is done competently, and there are a lot of flaws or at least flaws, conceptual flaws in holding a challenge. And yeah, I'm referring to the $1 million challenge and things like that. There are some conceptual problems in the approach, not necessarily the challenge itself. I don't really see any flaws in the experiments themselves. Some people have pointed out some statistical errors occasionally, but that's a given. That's going to happen sometimes, anyways. Um, there is a problem that the things aren't necessarily submitted for peer review and whatnot. I've heard people raise that point before. So it's not a scientific exercise. It's a challenge. It's a publicity stunt, and it's not. It shouldn't be taken as anything more than that. I don't see any problem with it as long as it's seen for what it is. It's not. Challenges will never be better than actual scientific experimentation, really delving into these subjects in depth. I think that when you think of challenges for that ask to see paranormal effects, they say, if you're psychic, prove it to us. I think the problem there is and I understand this approach, but the problem is it's almost, and I think Robert McLuhan raised this point, and I completely agree with that. The main problem I have with it, aside from the publicity issues, is the fact that it's almost like a fisherman sitting on a boat and waiting for the fish to jump in his lap rather than actually going out there and looking for the fish. And someone could argue that, well, if the fish don't exist, you shouldn't go fishing for them. But I don't think Columbus or any of the other explorers would have discovered the things they did if they hadn't actually left their continent and went out and started exploring. So I think that that is the difference between parapsychology and a lot of these challenges. I think that they should complement each other. They shouldn't be at odds, and that's a problem. I don't see a big problem with the skeptics movement, but you have people on both sides of the debate who are really strongly antagonistic toward the research, or really I guess, too inclined to believe, and they can be very arrogant. Trying to talk to someone who's convinced that these things happen is just as bad as talking to someone who's convinced that they don't. Neither one of the people or persons are actually approaching the issues in any rational sense. It's a lot of people claim to know the research. I studied these things, but they don't exist, so I'm a skeptic now. Or I used to be a believer, but now I'm a skeptic. And then some people say I used to be a skeptic, but now because I've experienced this, I'm a believer. And again, those are what Lamont would call in his Extraordinary Beliefs book, vows of prior skepticism or belief. And neither, we can't really be sure of either one of those avowals. And additionally, the entire concept of using those avowals as measures of establishing authority, that should be questioned. The fact is that there has been legitimate research in parapsychology going on for a very long time. It really started with the Society for Psychical Research in 1882, but other scientists and investigators did do studies before that. Now, there have been a lot of very terrible studies in parapsychology, but there have also been some very, very good studies. And I think we have to take everything with a grain of salt. I personally really want to get academically involved in this, but I'm also interested in the psychology behind paranormal belief and disbelief. Why people, when they're approached with extraordinary phenomena, why do they take the approaches that they do to the phenomena, which is something that Lamont's book first got me interested in. And I think that for me personally, it is all very, very exciting. I think the exciting aspects of the concept of the research outweighs any of the negative detriments. Now, I know that parapsychology has never been an easy field to be involved in, but I really think that by pushing for better standards of cooperation between skeptics and believers and pushing for higher quality evidence, even though there is a lot of very high quality evidence there, some of it isn't so high quality, but a lot of it is. By pushing for cooperation and really getting past our belief systems and working together toward some sort of ultimatum, some sort of goal, understanding these phenomena, hypothetically, that's what we're aiming for, whatever they are. I think if we do that, then parapsychology will go forward, and I think that is the only way forward. Now, another point, I think, and a lot of people have raised this point before, like George Hansen and other people, but for parapsychology, I think that everyone who is a parapsychologist who wants to be doing spontaneous research, especially, and also lab research, possibly testing macro PK agents and the like, if they exist, all of that should be focused on, okay, if you're interested in studying that, you should develop an interest in conjuring as well. You should understand magic and allied arts. Mentalism is my preferred field within conjuring, within the big heading of it. I also like bizarre magic. But as parapsychologists, as people interested in studying these things from whatever angle we are interested in our approach, we would be doing an injustice to the phenomena if we went in just too gullibly or too dismissively. I think that by training yourself to be a competent researcher, by learning things like conjuring, a lot of people learn different things when they first start out. A good starter book for anyone interested in mentalism would be 13 Steps by Corinda. And there are a lot of other books. It just depends on what you're interested in. Conjuring is definitely something every parapsychologist should be acquainted with. Lloyd Auerbach would probably agree with me. I don't really know him that well. I've shared a few messages with him on Facebook. I probably should email him. George Hansen, I'm sure he would. He's written on that. I just think it's very imperative if we're claiming to be experts or claiming to really want to get to the truth, we should be very competent and critical. We should be more critical than a lot of the people outside of the field are. A lot of the people outside of the field are extremely dismissive. That's true. But a lot of them are very open-mindedly skeptical. They're very inquisitive and they want to know what the truth is. And too often, I think the media skeptics, they portray a better, they have a better media presence, and not just that, the way they present their material, it strikes a chord with people, and I can completely understand why people would believe in those things. But being parapsychologists, being people who study the paranormal, entails quite a bit of things. It entails that we study these phenomena competently, and we also push for a better and brighter future. In the past, there were a lot of people who were involved in the field, like Harry Price, and there have always been people in the conjuring fraternity who I feel have been interested in parapsychology, whether from a angle of like interest in seeing whether or not the things are real, to the possibility, or actually, I guess, from more of a debunking angle. In fact, Howard Thurston actually endorsed Eusapia Palladino, and I know he believed in some things. You have magicians in the past who endorse certain aspects of the phenomena. I believe it was Maskelyne who believed in table tipping. George Hansen wrote a article called "Magicians Who Endorse Psychic Phenomena." But the point is, really, when you're talking about extraordinary claims, there are there are a lot of approaches to these things, and we don't really have a absolute, unquestionable working theory on how psi works. Otherwise, we'd be able to replicate it on demand. So it is true that you're always studying a negative effect, meaning that when you wipe out all supposed normal explanations, the only thing you're left with is the hypothetical X explanation, which we call psi. Now, maybe in the future this will change. Maybe we'll understand things more. The only way we'll be able to do that is if we keep pushing for it. So either we're going to find something interesting about human nature and human experience that really implies a lot of very deep philosophical questions, or we learn something interesting about human experience and psychology and how we look at the world and how our beliefs can really just bias everything and make us see things that aren't there, see ghosts. And maybe in the process, maybe we're chasing our own ghosts the entire time. Now, as a further example, if I were to claim that I was psychic and that I was able to predict your future or read your mind, be some type of all-knowing oracle into your life, your deepest secrets, your memories, your feelings, your emotions, if I were to claim something like that, I would have to back it up with evidence. I would have to show that I was psychic. If you claim that I was not psychic, you would have to back that up with evidence because you're making a negative claim. So until the point where I'm shown not to be psychic or I'm shown to be psychic, we can only say that there's no evidence for psychic functioning. We can't say that it doesn't happen, and we can't say that it does. If there is evidence for it, we have to assess the quality of the evidence and what the evidence seems to indicate. People can approach things from a variety of different standpoints. Now, if I were to claim to be able to bend metal with the power of my mind, like this, you would have to say that something was going on, and whatever you think that is depends on your beliefs. I think conjuring and mentalism and magic and whatnot, they don't have to be at odds. A lot of people think that the conjuring community has always butted heads with people who study parapsychology or psychical research, and that's often been somewhat true. There have been a lot of very skeptical magicians in the past, Dunninger, Houdini, Milborn Christopher, a lot of people, but Randy. But the problem, there are a lot of problems in the conjuring fraternity, the conjuring community. It's very divided. Actually, looking online at some of the discussions on these topics, I think a lot of magicians are extremely open-minded to these topics, and if we gain more cooperation from people who are trained in the arts of deception, and study those arts for ourselves, then I think we can really we'll be more competent researchers, and also that will help probably give a lot more credence to the field if we're very critical about these things. A lot of people underestimate the need for conjuring. There are some proverbial light bulb moments where things just seem to click. But with all that being said, we still don't have a lot of answers, and the only way to get those answers is to push for them, to really try to get to the root of these mysteries, and that's always been my hope. There are a lot of things we need to do in parapsychology. One of my biggest interests is going to be, or actually is in the concept of developing automatists for experimental research via using hypnosis and whatnot. For example, you could use hypnosis to develop people who can do automatic writing, and use that as a platform for experimenting in mediumship. And these subjects don't necessarily have to have had any prior mediumistic experiences. Now, whether or not this is real mediumship or not, whether or not they're in touch with the dead, or whether it's a mix of imagination and psychological factors, and also interpreting sensory cues and prior research and things like that in some of these cases, that's a different point. But I think that there are a lot of experimental tools that we can explore, and I think developing automatists is going to be one of the things that I'm going to spend a lot of effort on. I think that that could be a very, very productive avenue for research. So I may even actually write on that subject. I think I will write on the subject more. For now, though, you guys have a wonderful day. And keep pushing, keep moving on, moving up the hill.